you talk to and I'm not trying to indict anybody in these schools, but you talk to the leadership of the school, you get a mixed bag. Some of them are extremely apologetic and want to get on it quickly to get it fixed. A lot, we don't have the money for, and they want to point to the superintendent's office. Well, when that happens, my people call me, and probably like Secretary Taylor, when he gets those calls, guess who I'm calling? I'm calling the superintendent. And it's a whole different story when I call that person, because most times they don't know about the school. I can tell you right now, in the past 2 months, in numerous school systems ranging from North Alabama to extreme South Alabama and East and West, we have put a number of schools on what we call fire watch because their systems are down and have been down. It's a problem.
Is there a time limit that you have for that?
It's not no, it depends on how severe the problem is. I mean, it's not meant to be an indefinite run. We try to put that in there. And the fire watch it can tax that school's ability to provide its functions, because that person providing that fire watch, understand, for those that don't know, a fire watch is a person or multiple people depending on the size of the campus. All they do is patrol that campus and all the buildings, and they're the early morning. So should something happen, that's your alarm. And that's the only thing that person or those people can do. So it taxes, school systems, that particularly those that don't have the resources. They can't be answering the phone, they can't be opening the door for the nice old lady or old man who come to visit their grandchild or whatever. This is all they do. But my point is, it's widespread. And it's a much greater percentage than I think many people in this room realize. It is a problem. So the reason I'm bringing this up to the group is whatever we put down, whatever this commission ultimately reports back to the speaker, we need to have something in there that draws attention to this issue. Because unless we fix the fundamental stuff and we maintain the fundamental stuff that's already there, I'm telling you, you can put all the technology in the school building, regardless of how new or old it is, and it will not be maintained. We don't have something to hold the people who manage those schools and our school systems accountable. Quite frankly, I'm tired of my people going ahead and finding this problem reoccurring over and over again, because that's what's going to get our students and our staffs in these schools, regardless if it's K through 12, gonna put them in harm's way quicker than anything. And you have all the other technology in the world. But that's your first line of defense. And all those cameras and everything else that we're gonna put in our schools are gonna help my people, secretary's people, sheriffs over here to my right, their people, isolate where the bad actor is. But we could have stopped them from getting there in the first place. Gotta get off my soapbox.
Thank you.
I got the conversation started now, somebody else is starting. Because I could be here all day.
Any thoughts about minimum standards that would improve them?
Is that part of the safety plan now? Is that part of the review? You coordinate safety plan with the fire marshal?
I don't know about coordinating with our office. I mean, I have no problem with that. But we have to do a better job, in my view, of making sure that our schools, regardless of how old they may be or how new they are, the systems are there, you properly maintain. That's it. I'm going to use a bad analogy. It's going to be corny. It's like your yard or your pool, if you have one. That pool can turn green in a heartbeat if you don't maintain it. And it's going to be heck getting that thing back in order. Or your yard getting grown up and out of hands. You're going to spend all kinds of time trying to get it back where it looks nice. These buildings are no different. If we let it go and they get in such a state of disrepair, imagine the money that the school system is putting into that to get it back where it's operating properly. Not to mention the risk we're putting those occupying those buildings in. And that's what's concerning more to me than anything else, is the risk. Yes, ma'am.
So I appreciate you saying that, because a lot of times, it is a human factor that, kind of leaves our schools vulnerable, whether it is not maintaining or propping the door. So I think, continuing to get the buy-in from staff, especially from the leadership down, that's very important. I know I talked about the state council several times, but I know the state council now is joined in with the State Department and doing some of the, monitoring, compliance monitoring. I think from our perspective, we need a little bit more teeth if we find something that needs to be corrected. And given that, I think you could see an improvement. Because we're doing the monitoring, we're doing the walkthroughs, and if you say, hey, this needs to be fixed, but there's nothing that makes them fix it, it's gonna stay broken even though we've made that recommendation. So,
And I'll say this, after we left our first meeting, I think 3 of you came to me with this exact issue, that you make the recommendation, you do it, and that there's not the teeth, there's not the mandate, there's not the something in place that creates follow through.
so I think what we have good things in place. And when the governor put the state council together, and then they put the administrators together, and now we're working with compliance monitoring, which is giving them a better, idea of how to go and what to look for. I think the mechanism is there. I think we need just a little bit more to enforce what we have.
I mean, it's kind of what we talked about at the end, was legislating it, make it, don't put may in there, put shall, and fund whatever, whether it's inside or, the other one you said. Adam, what's the other,
There's a Hughes,
I
there's
thought
a
one
Ray,
But I would know that I've seen it on the top of the
CRG.
CRG.
Yeah, critical response things, them or whoever, if we listen to, and whoever, yeah, get money to pay for it, because that's what you're hearing when you call back, is we don't have the funds to do it.
Right. And then I actually talked to, I'm not gonna call a system out, a young lady over in green suit, probably won't know who I'm talking about. And I talked to somebody with the State Department just last week before the break, Thanksgiving break, because of the system that the state has taken over. And, I had tried to reach out to him, got to me first, because he'd already heard through his communication channels that the state fire marshal was coming over to this particular system about to shut the schools down. And I had informed him, no, that's not what we'll do. I can do it, but that's not our initial action that we're gonna take. First, I want to find a remedy. And of course, he and I talked, and we're working toward that now. But oftentimes, and it shouldn't have to get to that level. That's what some people are expecting from us, is this can issue what we call a fire marshal's order and shut the school down. Well, that doesn't help anybody. I mean, that just shuts the total school or school system down, and students are displaced, teachers that doesn't have to help anybody. If it's an imminent life safety issue, that there's no choice, then there's no choice. But it should never get to that point. And that's the reason I'm bringing it up today, so we can all look at it and try to avoid that potential somewhere in the future, but just so we can do a better job of maintaining what we already have.
One of the things that we mentioned last week, and I'd still like to know everybody's thoughts, was that when we do open up funding in the advancement of technology, in anything that lets you do that maintenance, that maybe we put a percentage that's required to be spent on that. That was one of your suggestions about that.
Yes.
See head nods, okay. Thinking of what that percentage would look like would be helpful from all of y'all, not me, that doesn't have to put.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah.
and even to what you're point, Ms. Marshall, is that, of all the things that we do related to safety, come out fire, severe weather, or even from a law enforcement, intruder type approach. Currently, what has the most teeth is probably from the fire marshal service. In the sense of just what you said, ultimately, you could close the building, close the school, based on occupancy, those kind of things. And so, when we talk about he has any teeth, frankly, he has the most teeth. Most of these other things that we do and are asking for are mere, and just being blunt here, they're suggestions that you have this level of security, or do this thing, or do that thing. And they're highly recommended, these are best practices, that tone is always out there. And we're constantly trying to, incentivize that, obviously, Dr. Butler, with the monitoring and those things that we do. But we're absolutely right. I think the discussion about when do we get to the point that there are some teeth that's not the extreme, but there's something that we can get their attention and or direct them in the right direction. I think one of the things I saw just recently, which I was surprised by, that is in the state of Tennessee, this latest law that they passed the last session related to their school safety up there. They dumped a whole lot of money in there, but one of the mandates was that every exterior door, for instance, be secured at all times. And the teeth to that is that at any given time, a law enforcement officer from any agency can check your exterior doors. And if that exterior door is found unlocked, they can actually fine or ticket the administrator at that building. That's something I hadn't seen before. But that is attention getting, to say the least. Because we've been working with some districts in other states and seeing those
That
kind
would
of.
be the fire marshal, that would be.
That could be Sheriff Jones, that could be the Calhoun County Sheriff, that could be, that could be the SRO that's in
The
this.
Decatur PD, they find that door open and they're able to get that administrator's attention that this is a problem, that fire system that's not working. Find them. It puts that responsibility to a different level, rather than being able to say, as you said, superintendent's office hadn't sent me the money, the state hadn't sent me the money. Well, we would have to do those things to make sure that, we give them the resources to get these things done that you're gonna mandate. But once you've done that, absolutely, some teeth in it makes sense. And that is the one thing that most states, from my reaching out into different places, are not doing. And I think that's a tremendous step Tennessee has made. And I can already see some results there in their plans, their infrastructure that they're starting to pay for, where they're putting funding that's coming to them, is related to making sure I don't get a ticket.
I'd be very careful with that because anybody could go out the door and there'd be problems made come up there and,
Well, certainly.
I mean.
And there's technology to fix that. But you have to spend money on it.
Madam Chair, I would suggest keep it out of A&T. From the district level perspective, A&T money, computer replacements, even roof replacements have taken priority, even as involved as I am, over school safety. The best money that we had that Dr. Jeter and Dr. Butler approved was the safety money, this time designated to schools. And I know Dr. Jeter and Dr. Butler approved those applications from us. And my involvement across the state, I think you see more money being put into securing doors, replacing locks and air chambers than we have ever had. The other suggestion too, for those of you in the system, at my level with 22, I had to allow the staff, encourage them to contact the safety coordinator for the system directly over lock issues. Because just as he mentioned, it wasn't making it to my level. It went to a custodian, it went to an assistant principal or facility director, and I didn't know it. I mean, I've got one campus that had 122 exterior doors. I couldn't keep up with every door, but when I started allowing the staff, encouraging them and telling them at the beginning of the year, any lighting and lock issue comes directly to me. And keep them, it's almost repaired daily when that comes in.
One of the differences there, Dwight, is, and I know you have worked with you, is that you take it very, very personal, very serious, and make sure those things get done. I think what you're saying, even, we're not seeing every district do that.
Right, and please understand, we only respond upon request for complaint, so we're not in all 1,479 schools on a regular basis, it's upon request for complaint. And granted, when we get a complaint, it's gonna be worst case scenario. And it could be from a staff member, it could be from the grandparent or the parent, no telling who it can be. But we see it, and we see it time and time again. There's a way that can be done without going to the extreme. I'm just asking that we all take a look at it.
Well, the fine system that you mentioned Tennessee was doing, I see that as at least a form of teeth, and I also find school systems to be extremely compliant motivated. If they're not safety motivated, they are compliant motivated. I've often said if we could get as much focus on reading and math and computer science as we are compliant, I think we'd be fine.
If you just remember people like Dr. Wiseman, at the local school level, at the high school level, he's not involved in the A&T
Yeah.
distribution. If he needs a lock fixed, he's gotta call, he's gotta take it out of local, or he's gotta be given something to the central office.
What
He
was
don't-
the
he doesn't-
safety
he-
funding stream you mentioned?
This year, we got a line item strictly for safety.
It was legislative
It
funding
was just a line item.
for school safety.
Yeah,
East
And,
Tennessee
and,
School
and that
Safety.
has been, I have seen, and I know Dr. Jeter and Dr. Butler have seen, I've seen more changes across the state
Yeah.
with just what he's talking about, because Dr. Wiseman and principals are not involved with A&T. That A&T is almost like capital. We're roofs and computers and cabling with that.
Okay. And that was, from the outside perspective, that was our thought, was if we put a percentage of the A&T that had to be for safety, it might be similar, but I hear what you're saying too. Those issues might never reach those people that are controlling the A&T. Okay. Nothing like last year when you had a bucket of money to put in lots of different places. But it is kind of nice to hear it was actually being used well, so.
Madam Chair, the nice part about that too was that it wasn't restrictive. And most of the time they have the school money, Title IV Part A, where they get a lot of their funds from. They were tremendously restricted this past year from the federal government. But they allowed to have more to do, so that gave our schools more they could work with.
Would you say though that the things that you're looking at and Hal's looking at and you're looking, they're all falling under the same little maintenance issues?
Yeah, maintenance is
Okay.
the Achilles heel.
Compliance, I mean, because all that he's speaking on falls under the compliance monitoring.
And we're already doing that.
We are doing that, and it's every 5 years that you actually go on rotation and you get a walkthrough and such. However, thankfully for the Safe Council and Dr. Jeter, we're kind of making it so it's more now. It's not just every 5 years. You may get that written, but the administrators are going in and working now constantly throughout the year, even with the folks who are not being monitored. And that should help with some of that maintenance. If we tell them, hey, you need to fix this, they fix it.
Of course, they maintain a large percentage of the monitoring information in the inside platform, okay, which is the emergency response plans and all those different critical infrastructure pieces, where every fire extinguisher is, where, the fire, all that kind of stuff is in there, which they are comparing to what they put on in the system versus what's reality on the site when they do the monitoring. And so that, has been a continuing effort from the vendor side of trying to make sure the folks are educated about what needs to be in there, what they need to be checking, need to be following. But just like with everything else, it's not mandated that they, you know, to the point, they still should do monitoring, they should still do these things, but nobody's saying you have to have it in there or there's a price to pay for that. It's still, frankly, even the monitoring, right, Dr. Butler, if you find a bunch of deficiencies on these monitorings you're going through right now, and I've seen the list of the ones that are up. If there's 10 of those with deficiencies, you simply ask them to fix them. You know, we're not saying you have to get this done by this time or Mr. Fire Marshal's gonna close the building, right? Or you're gonna get a fine or penalty. So that's where when we talk about teeth, keep going back to it, is that all these things, we're monitoring a lot of it. We're tracking this stuff. We're doing training to them and suggesting best practices. But until there, you know, like with anybody, with kids, until there's a
Stick at the end.
yeah, then we only get a certain level of result. And some are more motivated than others to meet those results, whether you punish them or not, or have some repercussions, not necessarily punishment. That's where we're at.
I appreciate that. I also, before we get time away, I wanna go through and just do kind of everyone's thought on the things that were sent out to you, and I know different groups saw different things, and so we'll share that with everybody on the committee so that before we meet next time, we can have our questions. But I also wanna get to what we all kind of felt like was the priority, which was that mental health side, and thinking of what are some solutions, what are some gaps that we see, and how can we do a better job. I know that was a lot in our SROs, that was in our mental health coordinators. We've got a starting plan, but we also need to make sure that they're working well. So I have a list of the stuff that was sent, and I'm just gonna kind of go through it one title at a time. And then if someone's got an opinion on what you read, that's what I'd like to hear at this point in time. So the first one on my stack is inside. Did anybody have a chance to look at that or have any opinions? It is the system that the state has been paying for, but it is up for renewal right now too. So how's it working? What's it going? Yes, sir.
Since we have a silence on this, I only learned about that in depth very recently, and because of my familiarity with that particular platform, I contacted our county assistant superintendent, and he walked me through it. And that brings me to wonder, of our 67 counties and all the city systems that we have, how many of them are using that platform to its fullest extent? Probably none.
Probably none.
How many of them are just doing it to check a box? I remember from our last meeting, when Secretary Taylor brought up, wondering what's the level of access for first responders, fire, police, emergency managers to have access to those systems. I'm betting that's probably widely varied across the state. I've been in emergency management now for almost 2 years, and until our last meeting, I'd never heard of it. So I'm not trying to draw a target on myself, but if I'm unfamiliar with it, then probably some others are as well. And it's very clear that the quality of what resides there is only as good as the quality of what's put into it and how well it's maintained. It's just like a lock or a camera, in that if it's never tested, it's never reviewed, then it may be there when you need it or it may not. And I thought what I would like to do is reach out to our association membership and find out in their experience what type of experiences are they having with access to that system. How well are their schools maintained? How plugged in are they with their schools? How plugged in is their local law enforcement? Do they have SROs at every school, or occasionally, or none at all? And try to see a kind of a cross-section across the state of where we sit right now.
And that would be extremely helpful for everybody, because most of us only know our area. And so,
I'm
no,
not an
I think that's
educator. I've never
great.
been an educator, so that's very
And the
unique.
number one thing, and I know Representative Baker will agree with me, that we pulled from our last results and summary was the best thing that we can do is somehow mandating, to be honest, I know everybody hates that word, but mandating collaboration. Because if you're not collaborating between that law enforcement side and that education side, then we're missing links. We're missing links on both things. And getting people to attend meetings, getting people to do. You know, we've got a school coordinator, safety coordinator that's supposed to be organizing that. How well are they listened to? What's really happening? Those are the things that would be helpful to know.
Yes, ma'am, and one other thing, if I may, is from an emergency manager's point of view, and fire, police, that also as well, I think most of us do understand that an educator's role is to educate. This is kind of like an insurance policy. You hope you don't need it, but when you do, you better be sure your premiums are up to date. So we have to be good stewards with those educators' times because they're supposed to be educating kids. But trying to find that right balance, and it's going to vary from location to location, but if you don't have an SRO assigned in school, then the next best thing is the local fire and police at least have a presence there, have a relationship there. Seeing the inside of the building for the first time when there's an emergency is a very bad place to be.
Yes.
Well, they're required as part of the EOP to have, you're supposed to list and say who was on your planning committee from both the EMA and law enforcement. That is part of the EOP requirement. Now, we all know people check boxes and do things like that. They write in Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and you probably went through half the emergency managers wrong, half the sheriffs and police chiefs.
And they change.
And they
change.
And that's what I found yesterday, looking at it for the first time. My predecessor was still in there, I'm not. There were several other people that I recognized, well, that person retired 2 years ago.
And so that system is paid for and available to each and every school through the Department of Education, RFP with them. So each system, each district, as we said, has a safety coordinator who's there, and we encourage them, to say the least, to have sit-down meetings, planning meetings with the proper entities, all of which you mentioned there, that they need to do that at every district. The key goes right back to what we're still talking about. There is no mandate that you meet with your EMA director. You just have to know who he
And
is.
there's no consequences for not doing so.
Exactly. And so while they will be monitored and have the EMA director's name in there, we have no way, Dr. Butler has no way of knowing that's you, right? It still goes back to, is there any accountability to that local district to use this tool properly? It is a tremendous tool that's been given to them. It just doesn't mean they're putting everything in it that needs to be there. And the safety, our training team, y'all's regional coordinators, do multiple trainings throughout the year. Talk about it, explain to them what needs to be in it, encourage them to have those planning meetings and to build their teams, not just checking the boxes, putting names, but actually have planning meetings and facilitate fire, severe weather, active shooter type plans. But there is no teeth to them not doing it. To keep going back to that very thing. So if we mandate it, how many meetings should they do it? And are we checking off to see
I
who's
think
there?
we set a minimum of one, didn't we? No, twice a year. We do.
Two trainings.
Exactly.
Pamela, you had something to add.
Oh, it's just kind of tough, again, we do a lot of training. We're doing 3 sessions, fall and spring. We cover multiple, topics. EOP probably driving most of them, because that's where, unfortunately, when I asked my educators, where's the EOP class that you took to get your education degree? And there's not one. So sometimes it's a little, when they go in, they start looking at it, can be a little bit, they can be a little standoffish. We've had talks about the current program now needs some updating, because which would help with that and streamline with some of the things that would help our educators be able to understand what the plan is. So I know there's maybe some talks into maybe trying to update that, and so it's a little bit user friendly for them to do. In saying that, it's very tough for our educators, and again, we try to encourage them to reach out. I'm just gonna keep reiterating, goes back to the leadership and their want to and their buy-in. And even though we talk about it all the time, the new thing out there, which some may not know, is the liability they hold. And there is new case law that has been handed down. There's several cases I speak on where it's not just the district that is being held liable, but it's the individuals in the building. And so that's kind of been the new kind of push for them to understand that they're liable all the way down to the ground floor. But I think the gap is that they don't have the good knowledge to do what we're asking them to do for the EOP. And then,
And they is the safety coordinator?
maybe not safety coordinator, because the safety coordinator is
The
like
educator
central
in the
office.
classroom?
The person who is in charge of that plan per school. And they sit down, they do the plan, or they hand it to a secretary and they fill out the boxes, and that doesn't help, because when you have an evacuation plan and somebody's just written something down, when you go to evacuate, you can't run a plan because you don't know what's going on. So it's really, it needs to be a better process and a better in how they're inputting the data, so they better understand what they're inputting. And so we've talked about how we can maybe make that a little bit better going forward, so it's easier for the educators to do that, to include our first responders. Another little holdout that we have with that is a lot of school systems, they don't want to hand out anything that's school related. Power school, cameras, inside. They kind of like to, I think.
And I'm not following, so, and everyone else seems to be following, so.
So sometimes, this is ours, and we sort of don't wanna, we don't know what people are gonna do with it. So I think it would be a good thing for everyone to know that they have permission to give it. And that when they give it to first responders, we have a level that we have to maintain to make sure we're doing things correctly too. Like for instance, Power School. A lot of school systems will not allow their SROs to have the directory information on Power School, which they are allowed to have. But they get.
It's like they don't know that though.
But they don't know that, or they just don't want to.
Well, that's controlled. Pam's absolutely right. That part of it is controlled by your technology people who are looking at FERPA. And they're not seeing that side of the fence that Pam's talking about, that is allowable. Same thing as Pam was saying with safety directors. Again, go back to Dr. Wiseman, building level principal, okay? His safety coordinator may not have authority over him. That safety coordinator at most districts wear many hats, but a lot of times they don't have authority over that building level principal, okay? I have a safety coordinator now. He doesn't have authority over my principals. He comes to me, okay? And I do. But there's misconception that safety coordinator, as Pam's talking about, has authority to assist these schools, assist these principals, and the background to make sure these things happen. And without that teeth that Pam and Pronti are talking about with that director, oftentimes in our 140 school systems, that safety coordinator is probably wearing 5 or 6 other hats and is not dedicated to working with those ground level principals on improving all of the things that's been discussed so far.
And as Pam said, has minimal of that.
Because they're not funded.
Background and experience in building a emergency operations. What is that? And a lot of times, I mean, they'll literally ask, what does that even mean? compared to what you know from an EMA director standpoint. So Kurt, you need to talk to your EMA director. Get your firemen, your policemen there. They know these terms and these things, and they can help you. But that stigma that he's talking about, of releasing information, sharing, and frankly, being a little embarrassed that they don't know. They're responsible to do a plan, but they haven't spent 30 years in EMA.
But you know what the converse to that is too many people in this profession think that if you don't have a 700-page plan, you're just not taking things seriously.
Yeah.
And,
That's right.
and nobody reads a 700-page plan.
That's right. It's gotta be very practical and something that you can actually execute, right, in the time of need.
Tell them like they're talking to legislators, they need to blow a plan.
Well, I really think you're gonna have to find some dedicated funding for safety directors, like we do our LPCs in our schools. We're starting to fund those. We have started funding our nurses. To really get serious at the school level, the system level, the safety coordinator is gonna have some funding. Otherwise, it's just another duty as assigned under a job description.
Well, maybe that's the person that, with that training and responsibility, that has the, ultimately is, that word responsible to the fire marshal.
Well, and apparently there is a liability that goes with all of that too, that people just aren't aware of.
They're not aware. These cases have just come out, 2021, 2022. If you know anything about case law, it takes a year, you know, to really, and so if you have case law 2021, 2022, this is very new. And so, yeah, I have personally seen changes when I do a presentation, I talk about this, people are like, wait a minute, now I can, because their immunity umbrella is very small now versus how it used to be. So, I think continuing to train and make sure folks understand what the liability is. I think that's important too. But I think some of it is just pure buy-in. They have to want to make sure that campus is safe. There is so many resources and so much going on in the state that is awesome. The best practices are out there. The best practices are being pushed.
Which is what we intended when we required the 2 meetings.
They're just
that
not
they would
taking
hear
it,
those best
and they're not
practices in
doing
other places.
It's-
And there's not the teeth they're making.
And Pam, what do we average, Dr. Judy, what do we average attendance on those
about
meetings?
100.
Oh, out of everybody. Okay.
So but they can pick which ones they go
Yeah.
to. So they have three this fall, 3 in the spring. So you can go to 2 in the fall, and you don't really have to go to. You have some that come to every one of them because
They
it's
care.
different information because they care. Yes, ma'am.
And they get good information there. I think what the White alluded to is them going back home then and having the if you will, authority, you know, to implement and make some of these things happen, or spend the money. They don't. They still are just going back with some suggestions that I need to keep my fire alarms up, right? And so there still has to be some ultimate, you know, consequences for not getting these things done. Because it depends on, but listen, we're mapping all the schools, we're keeping a very detailed emergency operations plan for every school, we're monitoring it, every, 3-4 years that we rotate to everyone, that rotate 5 years on the full blown, right? But as Pam said, we're checking it more often than that. The tools are there for them to document this and keep it, to track every drill, every piece of training that they do related to this. They can log into the inside system and track it. So the tools are there. It's the buy-in to actually get it done. And then, is there any consequences for not buying in?
I would say that the buy-in's gonna change too, because as these people in these different positions change. I mean, it's not a paid position, so whoever is the lucky straw that gets the safety coordinator. And they may work most of the year to get out of that lucky straw next year. Okay, I see. Anything else on the inside? Because I want to go through each thing and then I want to get to know how. Critical response group, which is the CRG, did anybody see anything in there in the mapping that you noticed? Helpful, not helpful, needed?
similar to y'all's.
Yeah.
The way it was mapped, had a little different way that they communicated with the first responders than what you have, if I read it right. Is that right?
I wanna hear your interpretation.
Well, everybody was on, they had a different type, I guess, database or whatever, that this information was stored. And the access was for EMS and personnel and first responders other than just police. It was for everybody that could get onto the system.
And even
And I
inside,
don't know.
currently, as I understand exactly what you're saying now, is that they really promote, which frankly, inside does too, that every EMA director, every local fire, inspector, marshal has access to this. But it, right now, through the RFP with the State Department of Education, is paid for by them, and they are giving this to the school districts, one by one. Okay, they pay for it, it's provided for them as a service. So they are the one who has the controlling, if you will, they have what we call a technical point of contact at every school district, which is the person who basically authorizes whether I can see it, whether I can see it, whether you can see it. If they do, they can share this with it is carte blanche, anyone in this room could have access to their stuff. Nobody is being denied that unless that local superintendent said, I don't want you to have it. And that goes back to some of what Pam said, are they scared to give it to you? I don't know why they would. We encourage them, we train them, we teach them that that's what you should do. So another system would be doing exactly the same thing. It's just a matter of whether they
Maybe
give
clarifying who does have access
Yes,
to
ma'am.
give that permission and that authority.
I agree.
I think that's what
And
Sheriff-
not worrying about that this isn't against FERPA because they also have those same responsibilities that they have to guard.
Would you say, Pam, that it is encouraged for them to share it with every?
So they can share directory information with like Power School. And that does not violate FERPA. As long as it is a safety concern, you can share that information. And a lot of people just, they kind of shaking their boots because FERPA is very big, it's very powerful. It's just, again, knowing and learning what you are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And the way we were able to access it and get our school board on board is we had to protect this thing called NCIC, CGIS. And that is everybody's information in this room. We have to protect as law enforcement officers. So we understand what that means. So that's how we got ours, because I had to explain that to them. But FERPA, I think, kind of, they either use it as a crutch or they don't know how to use FERPA. and how to
Every
process.
system is required to have a data management plan on the technology side. If it's written in there, who you can share it with, EMA, law enforcement, first responders. And then on the flip side of that with Pam, with your MOU, either with your law enforcement, your SROs, whatever, it's in there, you're more than actually covered. We have it in both. So, but every system, whether they have an MOU with an SRO group or sheriff's office, whatever, every system has a data management plan that this could easily be put in, who it can be shared with.
And the who is really important, and then the requirement. And ultimately, I'm gonna guess that superintendent is who's responsible, because that's that last call that you get.
There is
Right,
nothing,
Sheriff Blankenship, when it's the last time we did all the training that had the superintendent come in, we came in,
Yes, I do remember that,
so
yeah.
they're.
the best thing though, there is absolutely nothing in any of their emergency response plans that they can't share with each of the, the entities.
But permission to share it so that they compliant wise know that that is what they're supposed to do, I think I'm hearing that. And that would be
And if I'm not saying, CRG, I'm sorry, the name of the group,
CRG.
yeah, sir, they just passed.
And we will share, I didn't wanna send everybody 5 things like right before Thanksgiving, cause I was hoping everybody might look at it too. But we will share all of it with everybody, and then we'll have some presentations for those that we choose, so.
And I'd like to hear more about what they did, but I know they passed a piece of legislation in Florida, just, Governor Sanders signed, I think it was the last month, that requires every school to be mapped and to have a digital format of that they can share with first responders.
And I thought
That's
that's
what
what we had
they're
done
doing
that first time.
That is exactly what we do with Inside.
But you're saying it's not mandated, it's suggested. Is that,
As I understand even the piece of legislation,
is it mandated?
it just simply says that, they should share their emergency response information with local responders. I mean, there's no,
I have to go back.
Should is not shall.
bingo, there's no,
Well, and I'm just gonna go on the other side of this.
Yeah, I learned a while back in legislation, the power of the
meaning
word
like
shall.
shall be made, right?
And I apologize, but I'm gonna go on the other side of this. We have local law enforcement, we have local fire, we have local EMA that aren't very comfortable in school safety either. I'm gonna be honest with you, so if you mandate that, I'm not sure you're gonna get a good product anyway, because they're not very comfortable with it. I think
You're not, help me understand again where you're going. What do you mean, they're not very comfortable with it?
So, if the county.
Let me see if I can help you on something that you understand.
Okay, thank you.
You know what's going on in our city right now.
I certainly do.
I'm helping secure City Hall because that's not the PD's forte. They don't know about lockout, lockdown. They're geared towards response.
Yes.
Okay? I'm helping build their EOP for that building and for that facility
Because that is your area.
because that's where I have a background.
That's what they don't.
They
There are
don't-
areas
They
that
may
only
not.
understand, which is what I like about this group, is that you've got all different eyes that are coming at it.
And
I see
even if
what
you
you're
say, local law enforcement, you're in charge of this, they may say, okay,
Who do I arrest?
what do
Yeah.
what does that mean? What does that mean? You know,
Okay, yeah.
I'm supposed to help you with evacuation, well, what does that mean? I'm supposed to help you with reunification, what does that mean?
They've never done that.
Because they've never done that before. So if you have a school system
I
that,
mean, there's a huge difference in preventative and response.
Sure.
right, so I think there's just,
Okay.
I think there's some gaps, for sure, but I don't think we should just lay it all on our fire, EMA, and local law enforcement, because they may not be as up to speed as others.
This is a very specialized, when we talk about the security side of schools, it's very specialized. Agree with that, Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
And so when I've even been concerned, I know lately, I know in person, Senator Orr's new piece of legislation talking about having the monitoring and it being done by law enforcement, okay? But that is such a generic term, frankly. It's like saying a lawyer will check your accounting next year.
Well,
What kind of a lawyer?
I talked
Right?
to
I mean-
Arthur about that, Senator Orr about that, and that came out of some legislation he got from another state who had a dedicated law enforcement for K-12.
There you go.
He didn't realize that was a dedicated K-12 law enforcement agency, like their own college campus for K-12. He saw the legislation, and I think it's good, but it was dedicated. It came out of someone that was set up different than we are.
And I think, when we talk about monitoring, the process that Dr. Butler, Dr. Jeter, their program does as far as checking for the boxes is very good. I mean, they're doing that and following up on that and so forth. It's the collaboration piece here that we don't have. Even those boxes that were checked, did they talk to anybody outside their building to check that box?
And there's another consideration too, is, when we talk about the 67 counties and all of our city systems, we have such a broad diversity and capability of those 67 counties in the emergency management world. Many agencies are one person agency, and that person may or may not have other responsibilities. May also be the county engineer. I'm throwing things out there, but not all of them have the resources and have the manpower to be able to connect in the ways that they should. So obviously we have to make some kind of concessions and find ways to fill those gaps.
Going back to your question with the CR and the inside, and the concept probably kicked me over here. Pam and I are the longest serving members on the safety task force. I go all the way back really before it was a safety task force with Dr. Sue Adams when we were still
Department of Education.
dealing with bomb threats and things like that. We've come a long way, especially in the last 3 years, and I think even more in the last, since Dr. Jeter has taken over in the last 6 or 7 months, in terms of improving things. But going back 12, 14 years that we've had inside Virtual Alabama, basically all the same thing. If we switch now, as much as I want to pull Francie's hair out sometimes and fuss at him about this is not working right, it's not user friendly and things like that. If we start over, it's going to take as long to get everything in, because educators are still going to have to input it, do it, and deal with it. And when you're changing administrators and safety coordinators every 3 years, superintendent tenures 3 years in the state, when everybody's changing every 3 years, you're kicking that can 10 years down the road to be back where we are. Now, I want to kick their butt sometimes with it, but I sure don't want to start over.
That's good.
Well, and with that being said, the system, when he talks about it, was originally a quasi-government, I mean, it was run by the state. They started building this thing.
And that was where we were when we did the task force last time.
Yes, ma'am. And so it literally started there, and it has grown as we have grown. And it's trying to adapt as things are changing and new technologies coming on and that kind of thing. They're just no more than my opinion. But if there is something that platform is not doing that you need it to do, it's not a cookie cutter that they've just told you something's got to be there. In other words, they will adapt it. It will grow. Dr. Butler, would you agree with that? I mean, anything that y'all needed to adjust and to tweak and to get it there, you know, the engineering crew will work as hard as they can to make that happen. I'm not so sure, and I work in multiple other states now, and compete literally against other vendors. And I'm not seeing it. You buy a Chevrolet, you get what it looks like on the dash. Okay? If you buy this product, you don't want the knob there, we'll try to move it for you. Okay? And so I think that's what we have to keep in mind too when we think about any of our programs that we're doing and changing something is nothing's perfect.
Well, we see that in all areas, especially.
Well, we've done it several times with
Which is
testing,
my focus.
with,
Oh,
on
yeah.
education, oh God.
Take
From
it
our
out before we
education
have a new
policy
one, yeah.
experience. When you change systems, like when we went to Power School here, even it has been a major ordeal to change. And so, just keeping that tone about it is that I think there are lots of things that we're doing that we're far ahead. Maybe Pam would agree with this too, with most states, because you work the whole nation, deal with a lot of states related to school resource officers. And I think we're doing a great job. We just have some things we need to continue to work, to coordinate, to build on.
I want to ask about the last one, which may actually lead into some of the mental health, because when I look at it, that's kind of the side I see on that one as well, which was the Hughes technology information. Did anybody get a chance to look at that?
I did, and I was trying to figure out, maybe I was trying to watch the videos, and it's a lot of data-driven information. I personally, I would want more of an educator opinion, because to me, the school safety piece is the behavior threat assessment piece.
Yeah.
What does that one really look like?
Mm-hmm.
That would be my biggest concern as an SRO and law enforcement. You do see some concerning behaviors in there with the data. The videos just didn't do it for me. I don't know.
We're gonna let everybody look at it, but I did want to get, and that's, thank you for sharing.
And I did have a question just about how they're assessing
Yes.
at-risk and mental health
Yes.
in order to have data
I
around that. I didn't get it.
I felt like I was missing a lot.
Yeah.
from the package we were sent? And
When we send it to everybody, that's gonna be my request, is this is something that someone that's an expert, which is not any of us in this room, and we would like to hear what that is more, if you'll let me know, and then that's what we'll bring in.
As Pam said, it's very data driven based on what's put in there. It's doing some calculations and some logical thinking based on if you miss so many days of school and has been in trouble twice and they're a little higher risk. Those type of figuring is all that's doing. And it's based, much like we was talking about with the other system that was built from the ground up within a state, it was built off of a particular state who has a lot of that data driven presets that they're collecting from. And I think that for Alabama, we would have to collect a lot of that data to get into the system to come out on that. So does that make sense?
And we are on the very beginning of the collecting of the data, really,
Like
that we're sharing.
there's a lot of things
About
there.
that last year.
There's a lot of data they're putting in there that we may not even be collecting.
Right.
Well, and that kind of data sort of flies in the face of the conversation we had
Big
last time about trauma response and building a secure environment for both teachers and students. And so I think that's gotta be a big part of the conversation, because there can be a lot going on with a particular kid, and if all of a sudden they're getting identified based on those labels, then you potentially are re-traumatizing a kid, or definitely not necessarily providing the support they need to be successful and build resilience for that kid. So, yeah, but obviously we need more information. That's just,
And we'll share this with everybody, and then we'll try to find a time, maybe even next month, for some presentations. But before we go, because we are after an hour, and I really didn't set a time, I'll try to do that next time. Just so excited to have you all here. And I really do think that does show we all believe this is very, very important. And I want to make sure that what we have recommendations, or especially what we put or attempt to put through a legislature, that we have some agreement and consensus over, yes, this is a minimum standard that we would all like to see. That's what I would think. So from that mental health side, are there any other issues or gaps or things that you want us to focus on, and even looking for suggestions? And it may involve that mental health coordinator and
Right.
strengthening, or some of these same meanings to different things. How are we assessing? How are we collaborating? Who needs to be in that collaboration? It may be similar.
yeah, I do think we're doing some stuff in the early age group, and we're doing some stuff in middle and high school. Not that we're doing everything we need to be doing even in those areas, but there really is this gap for really after about second or third grade until you get to middle school. We're doing at-risk universal strategies in the school system, but there is this age group that I'd be hard pressed to say what kind of other supports just beyond the universal strategies we're doing.
Are you talking about like third through seventh
to-
grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, are you referring to that training or?
Any kind of multi-tiered system of support, so it could be training, it could be, so mental health service coordinators are primarily in middle to high school. Infant early childhood mental health consultants are in pre-K, and there's some other services that are provided kind of all the way through third grade, but that other group, I'd be hard pressed to say what are the at-risk interventions for that group. I just hadn't thought about it.
Well, and I think sometimes we do find that there's a gap in ages. I know one year, I don't know, it seems like about 4 years ago, I had a legislation that was about gaps because our 18-year-olds were in, and they were in a gap different ways. And we actually closed the gap, but not consistently. There were gaps that they needed to be as an adult, and then there were mostly gaps where we kept them as a student, as a youth. So good point. Good thing. Other gaps that we want to share before we get gone. And some of us around the circle have been really quiet, like our fire chief. And so I don't want you to burst forth next time. I want you to have a chance to speak. No, we have.
It- I would like to personally say, I appreciate the Fusion Center.
Amen.
We have really, the last couple of years, developed a really good partnership. And with all these, new SWAT calls that have come out and the bomb threats, we have really picked up this partnership and you have really helped us cross state. I just wanted to publicly say thank you.
Appreciate that.
Um,
I'll thank Secretary Taylor for the support that we get from him that allows us to do that. Yeah, we've got a really good, I know some of you know Rachel Salter,
Yes.
our school safety analyst. She's phenomenal. Now, Dwight and I talked about her at lunch, but if you don't get her monthly product, you're welcome to sign up for that. And we can talk more about it, or she can come to your district or come to your meetings, and
Would all of our school, safety coordinators get this?
they can. Yes, ma'am.
Well, they
I give
should,
him credit.
yeah.
He helped with this, way back when we first started talking about this, when we were figuring out who was getting what was happening in the schools till next June, and a binder that was going, but Dwight helped us with this, with the education component.
Is there a way we could get this sent to all of the?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm just an observer, but I'm from the State Department, but if we can get a copy of it, we will definitely push that out monthly or however
Yeah,
often
we
you
do.
guys.
We push that out monthly, and you know, it's a good snapshot of what we've seen each month.
Yes.
But it's only a snapshot of what we're seeing each month, meaning that there's a lot that goes unreported. And it's fine. It gets handled at the local level, and that's fine. But if we want to look at a snapshot of what we're seeing across the state, the more reporting we can get, you know, look at trends, look at and that talks about guns found on campus, knives found on campus, the outcome of that.
Yeah.
And I would say too, from those of you working from a school perspective, I always tried to run it through my law enforcement and let them know the confusion. I'm doing that now simultaneously, and I will say, as I told Director Mosley, Ms. Salter has probably done more to help my absentee rate this year on bogus and social media threats that were in Iowa and Indiana and things like that, because she was, rather than waiting and send it through CID and investigations and things like that, she was getting it to Pam and I, because I copy, we all copy Pam on everything. She was getting it back to me a lot of times before school even started, before the mass checkouts and things came.
Most of them are between 7 a.m. and 12. So,
Or 12 a.m. and 7
right,
a.m.
right, that's absolutely. But
And we talked about one, we're talking about one analyst, and if this were the number of school districts we had in here, one analyst could handle it fine. So I say she is phenomenal, but it's one person that's doing this, and she's doing a lot.
Jay, with the information that's starting to go into, the inside platform now related to the behavioral threat assessment, there's some 80 districts that are starting to do those on the platform and put information in that. And I know we need to have a coordination conversation about the information. When you talk about information coming in related to threats, that's exactly what it is. And again, I know it's maybe that's what I'm talking about, is that data and us having a way to focus it back to people who have a need to know, it goes right back to that collaboration. Okay. We'll be glad to help in any way with that possible.
I don't know if Jay knows this, but working with Rachel, she told me the source of a Snapchat
Oh, wow.
origin before Snapchat could tell me. And I was talking directly with their law enforcement and K-12 coordinator that I had met at a conference and emailing with her, and Rachel got it to me, and I shared it with Snapchat. I said, Fusion centers across the nation have already determined where this is coming from.
people don't.
They don't get paid
They
to
don't.
find the threats.
There you go. They, Facebook.
They have a different.
They have a different outlook. than
Yeah,
we
they
do.
do.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that, and I appreciate what you're doing, sir. Because I want to step off this one little next piece, and I'm going to be quiet. But we are making our schools hard targets with all the cameras and the locks and everything else that we're doing. People are going to quit trying to come in, and they're going to try to start getting us to come out, which is so important for you to let us know what is credible, is not credible, so we can hold that evacuation before we move out.
That's a good point.
And so I just, that's very important, because they're gonna quit trying to come in. Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you, it's very, and, to piggyback off that is the EMA. That's something that we have to start planning for. And a lot of our districts, they immediately evacuate, and we should be holding till we know and then making the decision. And I'm not quite sure our
You're talking the
EMAs
same conversation I had yesterday.
and our school systems are ready to make that change. But I'm just gonna tell you, I appreciate what, because I reference that a lot, because that is so very important, what y'all are doing, so we can make those good decisions. So thank you.
Well, and I think not sharing information sometimes is designed to keep everyone safe. So everyone doesn't know what the plan is. I mean, it's what we said when we first got here too. Whoever is upset and they're a part of that school system, they know the weak links, they know the place to go, they know what they can do, and not wanting to share that with the whole world is part of our thing. But making sure that we set some minimum standards that we can all live with, but they are really good foundational places. What I'm gonna try to do this next time, I have more information now than I even did after our first meeting, is kind of put that in an order and share that with everybody. And if you've got specific people or specific details that would go with each part of those minimum standards, just share that with each other as a group. We'll share the information that we've been sent. We'll see if you've got a request that you'd like to hear more, let me know, and that's what we'll set up for the next meeting. We'll set a little bit more time for that one. And then, but we'll continue to try to work with some specifics, just like connecting a fusion director doing safety analysis with every single safety coordinator. I mean, those are simple things that we don't have to wait to do, but we can do that. And we can also communicate just through reply alls on ours so that we're all on the same page.
So, Ms. Faulkner, could you jot this down? Could we possibly look at building a mentorship for our new safety coordinators? For example, you know, Dwight.
Now, I see what you're saying, and
That
I
way
think that's what
they
we
learn.
intended those 2 trainings to be. But when you say that we're having 3 trainings one semester and 3 the next, well, 2 might be too few to require.
Well, again, I think it goes back to that safety coordinator being someone who's sent to these things to get the training and to check that box. But they go back home with very little authority, very little knowledge, be able to
Yeah.
implement any of those things. And that's what we have at the moment.
Or they have a different hat, like Dwight was saying, that suddenly has a bigger
Combination.
fire
Yeah.
going now.
Or they don't know how far they can go. If they can talk to Dwight, say, hey, I got this issue. Oh, yeah, you do this and this. Oh, because they've never been in that role before. So it may be a mentorship.
Good point.
So they literally come back with some great information. That's it. Hey, Mr. Superintendent, we need to do this and this and this. And he says, but amen, please. Right? And we're moving on. That's as far as he can go. And so when we blame them then for not getting done, where is the the education's going to someone sometime that's down the chain, if you will.
Well, the safety coordinator, they're doing different jobs, and we know that.
That's fine.
And while in a perfect world with all the money in the world, yes, we could fund all these different things, but we don't have all the money in the world. And I'd still like the majority of our education funding to go towards educating. So, but thinking of mentorship, I just want us to think, do we need anything else training wise for the mental health coordinators as well?
We do. And we've been in.
I've seen several overlaps, yeah.
Yeah, we've been in conversations with Dr. Warfield and, we have a list of trainings that we would love to be doing.
Okay, thank you. Alan?
Just on the note about the funding and such, one thing that came to mind, I've been quiet most of this meeting, but this would be, perhaps maybe consider doing some type of stipend for, since these are people that the school system safety coordinator does have other hats, other functions and all, but at least to make it, right now, it at least makes it a little bit more worth their while. They're at least getting a stipend of some sort. And I would like maybe even consider looking at this, of course, this is part of funding and all, as since it's not sort of an auxiliary position, but each of the own site and school safety, then designated person and coordinator at each school site also have, it would be lesser than obviously than the school.
For the whole
The
system.
whole system and all, but I think it'd be something to explore, to look at, because now, once they're getting some money for this, then going to the meetings, I think there might be a little bit of an enhanced sort of like approach to it, that I'm being compensated for this position I was already doing then for no extra money and such, but now with that little extra money, so it's not like it's a whole lot, but I mean, it's not that it's a necessarily great now. One thing we'll be considering coming up this next session, that will be adding a stipend then to special ed teachers. The special ed teachers already being compensated for the work they're doing, but it might be just due to the shortage and such, helping them to feel more valued in what they're doing. And so I sort of equate it to that a little bit. It's helping this school safety coordinator feel more valued in what they're doing, and maybe to do it with a little bit more vigor or enthusiasm maybe than before, maybe because they're feeling more valued that, hey, this is something that is important. So maybe it's something to throw out there. It's not like we're trying to create a whole new position, because it's not something they'd be doing, although there's a focus throughout the year, but they do have other hats that they're wearing, and that's respective of both the school system, school safety coordinator, as well as each individual, and that may be a teacher, it could be assistant principal, whomever's that's on site in the school person as well. But I think that would be something for us to maybe just look at and consider to see if that might be a possibility.
And I agree with that, because I mean, it's 24/7. I mean, this position is it may be a ball game night, it may be a 6:30 in the morning type situation. I very much echo that. I think that sounds like a great idea.
Good idea so far. I'll see how well I take my notes and how well I can read them. When I try to put them together, maybe Adam can help me. He's much better at details. Anything else for the good of our cause?
One thing I will echo to what she said, we're in the response mode. I pray to God we never have something like that happen in the state of Alabama, but if it does, I don't want to fail. I don't want to be as some other states and other places where it was a tragedy that we could have done more. And so getting that information is something that's not happening across the state. I don't have access to my school cameras. If something bad happens, that safety coordinator, superintendent, the SROs, all law enforcement is going to be rushing to the scene. The people that need access to those cameras is the fusion centers, the East Alabama Metro Crime Center, our dispatch. They're going to be the ones that need that type of information to say, this person's in X room looking at this camera. So having a way to get that information so we can respond, keeping it all in a little box, the school system doesn't help law enforcement, because there's going to be nobody there to get it for us. So we've got to get that information to our law enforcement. And I understand, I've had FERPA thrown at me a million times.
It's an easy throw.
It is an easy throw, and as law enforcement officers, as Pam has said, we understand that. We have logins and we have all these safety checks that we have to do. So it's not creating a new wheel, it's just being able to get that information to us, and that's not happening, and that's something that's got to be fixed. But when something does happen, people that's responding or people have it locked down, they're not going to be available to check that information to be able to send it to us.
When we look about who should be included in this area, and I truly see both of these, the building safety act as well as the mental health, because they're in every terrible situation you've heard in a school, it's both. It's not one or the other. There's both issues. So making sure that we're including everyone that needs to be included, the right people, and that we're minimum standarding the necessary maintenance that we need, but also the necessary number of trainings that we need.
Every time something has happened with an individual that has mental health issues, the whole community says what? They knew it.
They knew it.
They knew it, that there's no particular way to act on it, and that's what's very frustrating for law enforcement, because we're people of action, and see a problem, we wanna fix it. And not having that ability is really frustrating.
Okay, good things. Anything else? Well, I think it's very important. I think that's why we have a large circle around this room. Thank you for giving up your time. I'll try to kind of consolidate our thoughts, and if you want to add some, please just let me know, and we'll continue to grow that. And then if there's some groups that you'd like to hear from, you think might be beneficial for our state to hear as a group, I think that's part of what the speaker would like to, is to get some recommendations from each and every part of this house. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.